Welcome to California Unearthed. I am standing in front of what they call a core drill for hard rock mining. Back in the 1800s, when they were mining for gold, they would use this to sample for quartz. Where there's quartz, there's gold. It's pretty cool, so they would use that thing behind me to do that sampling. And this is a good introduction for where we are at today. We are off of Highway 299 in Shasta County in a town called Shasta. Shasta was the Queen City of the North at one time, and a little bit of history of this area. We're going to go walk around the town a little bit, show you everything that's here. This is actually a state historic park now. It's the Shasta State Historic Park. We are right off, I said, off of Highway 299. So a little bit of history on Shasta before we get started here. When gold was discovered down in Coloma on the American River by John Marshall in 1848, a gentleman by the name of Pearson B. Reading traveled up here to Northern California and discovered gold in 1849 in Clear Creek, which is just south of here a little bit. And so they had settlers come right to this area. They lived in lean-tos, tents, and this little town was called, or encampment at that point, was called Reading Springs in 1849. 1850, they changed the name from Reading Springs to Shasta. And so 1850, you had a little bit of a town here. 1852, we had more businesses came in, and then in 1852 the first of two fires came through and basically burned the town down. They rebuilt the town. 6 months later it burned down again. There were 70 businesses here at the time. All 70 businesses burned, unfortunately. And after that, in 1852, they built brick buildings from that point on. Brick buildings and metal doors, so those buildings wouldn't burn. And so we will go see some of those brick ruins. We are right behind the courthouse here, and we'll explain more about the courthouse when we get up to that point. But that courthouse is really cool. They've put it back to its original conditions of 1861 when it was here in Shasta County. This town of Shasta was actually the county seat for Shasta County up until 1888, when the Central Pacific Railroad came through and bypassed Shasta and decided to put the terminus of the railroad in Redding, California, which is only 4 miles east of us off of Highway 299. It was an easier, flatter route for the railroad, and they had plans for the future to put a railroad down the Sacramento River and up into Oregon. And that route was, like, once again, a flatter, easier route through the mountains than it was to go through Shasta. So they bypassed Shasta, and in 1888 the county seat moved from Shasta over to Redding. And from that point on, it was then the decline of the city of Shasta, unfortunately. So like I said, we're going to walk around town a little bit, show you some of the old ruins, show you the courthouse, where the couple of the hotels used to be, and I believe there's a brewery here, and there's a couple cool shops down at the end of the road we're going to check out as well, and a couple little surprises on top of it. So come join us to unearth some history here in Shasta. This is the old Pioneer Barn on the back of the county courthouse. Yeah, they don't build stuff like this anymore. You can definitely smell like you can definitely smell the age in here.
Here's a little fun fact. I don't know if it's 100% true, but my grandfather had an uncle who was actually drove stagecoaches. And my grandfather said at one time when he was a small child, he went with his uncle on the stage and came here to Old Shasta. Again, I don't know if that's 100% true, but he had some good stories.
And since there's a stagecoach here, I actually have a quick little story of my own to tell you guys. If any of you have ever heard of the Ruggles brothers, in 1892, there was a stagecoach that came from Weaverville to Shasta here in town. And from Shasta, it went south into Reading, and the Ruggles brothers, at some point just outside of Shasta here, just east of town, about a mile or so, the Ruggles brothers robbed the stage and took off with the Wells Fargo gold box. One of them was shot and wounded and taken to the Reading jail. The other one got away, but he ended up getting caught in Woodland and brought back to Shasta County. At this time, Reading was the county seat in 1892. Shasta was no longer the county seat, so the courthouse and jail were now in Reading. So the Ruggles brothers were both caught. They were beloved by the town's women, actually, which is kind of a funny story. And the men did not appreciate the women's affection for these guys, and the fact that they shot and killed the stage driver. They basically broke into the jail, broke into the safe where the keys were, took the men out of the jail, and ended up hanging them by the railroad tracks in Reading off of Shasta Street. And there's actually a photograph of the hanging. And they were left there hanging for a couple of days just to prevent other people from getting the idea that stagecoach robbing was a good idea. So kind of an interesting story. There's a whole lot more of that story, but we're not going to get into that today. All right, so we are at one of four cemeteries here in Shasta. Yeah, believe it or not, there's actually 4 cemeteries here in town. This is one of the most popular ones. This one is called the Union Cemetery. It is just behind the courthouse, about a block or so down the street. And this is a really cool cemetery. A lot of pioneers from the gold rush era are buried here on this property. We're not going to travel around here today. This is a large cemetery. That's another video for another day. And actually, I was just talking to the ranger here in Shasta, and he said they are mapping the cemetery, and so there should be a map of where all the graves are here coming soon. So I'm gonna wait until they're done with that project and get that map and do a whole nother video just on the Union Cemetery here. If you look behind me, you'll notice that a lot of these trees are burned, not a whole lot of vegetation. This was part of the car fire came through here and burned down a lot of the trees and a lot of the brush. So it's a lot more open in here than it used to be. And like I say, you can definitely see the damage, and we're gonna go check out some more. much like any old gold rush town, you gotta have beer. So they have the Washington Brewery that's sitting right behind me. This is where the town got their beer. And actually, really cool thing, later on we're gonna head down to the bakery and the general store. And in the bakery, they would have a keg of beer in the bakery for the ladies of the town, because the ladies wouldn't go into a saloon or to the bar unless, you know, you were a dance hall girl or something. So when they went to the bakery, they would have a keg of beer for the ladies to partake on. So that keg of beer came from this brewery right here behind me. Like I said, any gold rush town, you gotta have your beer. And once again, I want to point out, made of brick. So this was built after the 1852 fires. All right, so we are across the street from the courthouse where there once sat a hotel. Ran into this plaque right here. This is pretty cool. I'm gonna have Cheryl zoom in on here so you can read it. My eyesight, I can't even read this thing, but it explains a little bit of the history of Shasta, like I was just telling you. The second fire was 1853, not 1852. I misspoke. I know it was 6 months after the first fire, which was in 1852. I was only a couple months off there, so 1853. It does mention the Lassen expedition over Lassen, bringing the 49ers from the East Coast over here to California to try their luck at gold. A sign for the Carter Oak Hotel that was sitting next to the plaque right there. This is one where the one of the two hotels sat. The date on this is 1856. Obviously, it no longer exists here. As you can see, we're right across the street from the courthouse, and to the left of the courthouse right here is where the Empire Hotel once sat. So that empty spot right next to the courthouse was once the Empire Hotel, the second of the two hotels here in Shasta. So we're going to go ahead and go across the street, go check out inside the museum of the old courthouse. Here is a view of the Carter Oak Hotel from across the street. You see that little sign I was standing next to, along with the placard. Inside of the Shasta courthouse that was put here in 1861. It's actually the second courthouse. The first courthouse was up on the hill, and they moved it here when they needed to expand. This wasn't originally a courthouse. Originally, three different offices in it, one of them being the Shasta Courier newspaper. And in 1861, they left here, and this all became part of the courthouse. All right, so we are now in the courtroom here at the courthouse in Shasta. This is where weddings were performed. You got your case heard. people were convicted of crimes or innocent of crimes. I know of 3 people that were hung on the gallows just outside the door here. So they were convicted in this room right here. And we're going to go downstairs into the jail and show you what the jail looks like and out to the gallows. The gallows is just a reproduction of what the gallows looked like back in those days. It's not the original gallows. But like I said, I do know of the 3 people that were hung here in this courthouse. So let's go down to jail and check that out.
Looks like the jury box.
So speaking of the gallows, here in the old tax assessor's office, they have the old gallows ropes. Can you imagine?
That's right, I'm taking him to jail.
So it's 13 unlucky steps down here to the jail. It's pretty dark in here. I don't know if the camera's gonna be able to pick this up or not, but we'll see. A little bit.
A little bit, it's a little blurry. I don't know if it's gonna... I think it's too dark for it to... Isn't this where the ghost is at?
Yeah.
I heard there's supposed to be a ghost of one of the prisoners in here.
Leg irons and stuff over here.
Maybe it's not working because it didn't come on.
Huh?
Maybe that thing isn't working.
Yeah, probably don't have it on.
Oh, there's like a mask actually the mask that they have here that they'd put over the person's head before they hang, it looks like it's from a sleeve of a sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Looks like a couple more. So it looks like they had a total of 4 cells. Little wood stove in the wintertime. Jake will be out of the jail for the summer. Oh man. So a cool little fact is that when you go into that furthest cell, there's a sensor on the floor, and it gets what is supposed to be one of the ghosts named Jake. But unfortunately, guess he's out of jail for the summer. Guess he was doing some good. But it's actually pretty cool. The kids get in there, and then it was kind of spooky back there. Maybe.
So these are the gallows out back of the courthouses where 3 people lost their lives because they couldn't obey the laws and were a little bad. So we're gonna go up the stairs, check out the gallows from up on top, and see what it looks like there. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it.
So it says the gallows is a restoration of the one in which John Baker and Charles Croce were hanged on August 26, 1874 for the crime of murder. Before being hanged, and with the permission of the officials, John Baker sang a song.
So, yeah, I'm standing on top of it here. Luckily, there's no rope around my neck. Here's a quick fun fact that you guys may not know, but if you look behind me, the width of this highway is actually one of the widest highways in California. And the reason why is because they believe that if a fire is going to start on that side, the wider the highway, the more it's going to take to jump and get on this side of the highway. So it's another way of preventing this town from completely burning down once again. But like I said, look behind me, you'll see how wide this highway is, and that's the reason why. Is once again fire prevention. We are on the other side of 299 now. This is all the brick buildings for all the shops that were on this side of the road. This is considered the longest set of brick buildings north of San Francisco. So we're gonna go down and check out what businesses were in here and see what we can find. So it kind of feels weird that we're in the middle of a once thriving business and now it's just brick and grass. Well, here's the funny thing. Here in California, this is what, 140 years old. And as far as history goes, this really isn't that old compared to the East Coast and the European countries. California history really isn't that old. But these buildings definitely look more than 140 years old, that's for sure. Once again, metal doors with the brick prevent the buildings from burning down.
Robert Clamper plaque.
I'm going to have Cheryl read the plaque for you.
On this site in May 1852, a group of Shasta merchants met with William H. Noble to employ him as a guide over a direct route he had marked as an immigrant trail. This meeting resulted in the establishment of the Nobles Trail, rededicated April 27, 1985 by Trinitarius Chapter number 62, E. Clampus Vitus.
If you guys don't know what E. Clampus Vitus is, that's going to be a whole nother video that I'm going to do. That's why I'm wearing this red shirt today. I am a member of E. Clampus Vitus, and so that is an organization that puts these plaques on old historic buildings. It's called plaquing, and they did it to this one. We have a couple other places we're going to go that we will find other plaques that E. Clampus Vitus has put on buildings and other historic items.
So a little map of what the town looked like in 1856. Actually, this is where we are at right now. The Masonic Lodge across the street. This is the original Masonic Lodge from 1856. This is the oldest continuously used Masonic Lodge in California. There's a building right behind me here. Like I said, it's the original from 1856. I am not allowed inside. I don't think they want a clamper inside their Masonic Lodge. But from the pictures I've seen and the history I've done on it, the upstairs is decorated with the furniture, the wallpaper, and everything from the 1800s. It's all original except for the lighting. They've now put electricity in the building, but they tried finding lighting fixtures that matched the old
kerosene lights that they used to have. But everything else upstairs in the Masonic Hall is original from the 1800s, which is really, really cool. They actually have photographs from, I believe, 1890 or 1900 that show the Masonic Lodge, the hall, the way it is today. So a lot of people come here to photograph these old buildings. So these buildings have been photographed for art purposes for many, many years now, and people still come out to photograph these buildings, not only for art purposes, but just for historic purposes. They're really beautiful, especially in the fall and the winter as the sun's going down. It's just amazing. Amazing thing to see here.
There's a lot of people that come here to have their engagement photos done with these old buildings, which I've seen a lot, and they're pretty cool. Especially if you're into history, that'd be perfect for engagement photos. I think I've seen actually, there've been a few weddings here too. We've driven through, and there's wedding going on at the park, and wedding photos with these old buildings. Here's what some of the buildings look like. Look at those old cars. Looks like it's like in the 1920s or so. Tin roofs were removed from the buildings to help with the war effort. Interesting.
And that's a good point that Cheryl just made about items being removed. During the World War I, World War II, the state didn't own the town of Shasta at that point, and people didn't think about saving this stuff for future generations. They didn't think about preserving the history. And so they tore stuff down. They demolished buildings. They demolished historic sites. And so we're really lucky to have what we have still standing. And like she said, they took the tin roofs off of these buildings for the war effort, and they removed and destroyed other items, other buildings. But like I said, we're really lucky to have what we have, knowing that these people in the past didn't consciously save this stuff for the future generations and future historians like myself. So what we have here, this was the old butcher shop that is in front of me. And what we have here is what they called the old refrigerator back in the day. This was a where they stored the meat. They would get ice and bring it down from the Trinity Alps or Whiskey Town. And so they bring the ice down from the mountains, put it in here, and pack the meat around the ice. So this is the first refrigerators, were these holes in the sides of the hillside that would preserve the meat with ice from the local mountains. And there's nothing else left of the butcher shop other than just this old refrigerator.
Actually, this is what the butcher shop used to look like. Built in 1855. It was known as the city meat market. It was destroyed by the fire in 1878. Pretty cool picture though.
And that's a good point Cheryl just made. I told you about the fire in 52, the fire in 53. We had another fire in 1878. This is fire area. The car fire roared through here and threatened the museum, threatened a lot of other buildings here in Shasta. And so we're still dealing with fire danger here in this area. This wasn't just a one or two times thing back in gold rush days. We're still dealing with it today. So this is the old blacksmith shop. You need your horses shoed, any metal work that needed to be done. Iron fences around the graves down at the cemetery. It was all done right here at the blacksmith shop. And a really good example of this is you go to Knox Berry Farm down in Boynton Park. They actually have a working blacksmith. And children and adults that have never seen that can actually experience what a blacksmith does and how he does it, and it's kind of cool to watch.
Mm-hmm.
It's open, you can enter.
Okay. All right, so we've come down towards the end of town here. There's two interactive shops that still exist from back in the 1800s. It is the general store right behind me and the bakery right next door. We're going to go into both buildings here, check it out, see what they have inside. I know the general store has some items that are from the period, from the 1860s, 1870s. So when the state took over the park in the 1950s, they found a lot of things stored next door in the bakery, like old shoes, old merchandise from like the 1860s, 1870s. So that's how we know a lot of the stuff in here is original. And some of it's just reproduction. But all the stuff that they found in storage is original from when this all shut down. Let's go check it out. So I was just told that I was correct. And the lady here in the general store just gave me a number. She says 70% of the merchandise in here is original. I know there are shoes with the original shoe boxes here that were taken from storage that are original. There's a lot of other items in here that are original as well. Somewhere over here, I know there's a bottle of root beer.
Yeah, I think it was over.
It was over in this section over here. Is a bottle of root beer that there's a little bottle about this big that makes 5 gallons of root beer. That's pretty cool. And then let's go back to this back room. I want to show you guys something back here real quick. So back here in the back, this is where the men came and talked, communicated, had some cigarettes, cigars, played some cards, kept warm and talked. Ladies weren't allowed back here. It was just men. And so that's what I was saying before. The ladies went to the bakery next door, and that's where they had the keg of beer next door, where the ladies can partake in the libations in the bakery, where the men were back here in the back of the general store.
I think the shoes you were talking about over here.
Okay.
I think those were the shoes that they found right there. All right.
And then over here, you notice mustache cups down here in this china. And that's the thing about Old Shasta, is actually a very prominent families lived here. It wasn't all miners and poor. They did have some rich, prominent families who could afford china like this. Mm-hmm. And you got to remember, general stores like this, they were what I like calling mining the miners. They're making their money off the miners by selling shovels, picks, pans, everything the miners needed to go out and mine. And then they'd come back, use their gold dust, buy more materials. So the people that really got rich out here were the people running the general stores, bakeries, all the merchandise. All the merchandise buildings here in town. That's who got rich off these miners, not the miners themselves. Oh, I like the idea that 70% of the stuff's original.
Yeah, that's so
incredible.
cool.
I like to tell people too, with the medicines, because people just don't remember, especially young people. There's no laws back then.
Right.
For medicines, there's no FDA. People just put whatever. The swamp root has turpentine in it. That's a laxative that's in there. There's turpentine.
Where's the snake oil?
It's right here.
So if you notice up here on the shelf, these are all original up here. That's snake oil. And if you know what snake oil is, these guys got rich off of selling miracle cures, and all that is just alcohol mixed with a couple other things, but that's it. It's just alcohol. They put some food coloring in it, called it an all cure. Cured everything. And there's certain items here also that have turpentine in them as well.
And chloroform. We were
These
told
people had no idea what they're putting in their bodies. This is the Jewish cemetery. And this is another plaque from E. Clampus Vitus. So the baby Charles, this is the pioneer baby grave. When baby Charles was buried here in 1864, the parents were from Red Bluff. So this is towards the end of the Civil War. The parents came all the way from Red Bluff, 30 miles south of Shasta, by covered wagon up here just to bury their son in hallowed ground. This being a Jewish cemetery, it was the only Jewish cemetery in Northern California. And so this is the only place that they could bury them in hollow ground. And we're going to look around a little bit here. I'm not going to go down to the grave. If you want to see what the grave looks like, go to my other video here on this channel, the Pioneer Baby Grave video. and this is before the car fire. Now this is all burned from the car fire. You can definitely see the highway that used to run alongside of the grave, and you can definitely see the grave from up here as well. We could not get to the Catholic cemetery today due to fire damage. The road up there is closed, the cemetery is closed, so we couldn't get to the Catholic cemetery, which is the second out of the 4 cemeteries here in Shasta. This is the 3rd cemetery, the Jewish cemetery. That is the only headstone here in this Jewish cemetery. It was told that all the other headstones were taken out. The bodies probably, we're not for sure, but probably still remain underground here in this section of land. But nobody knows for sure if the bodies were removed or not removed. I'm assuming they're still here, because why would the Pioneer baby grave still be here and everybody else get removed? So let's go take a look here. You can see that the greenery is starting to come back from the fire. You can see the grave there in the distance. You can definitely see the old highway going past the grave. I actually have a photograph of the highway running alongside the grave. And interesting fact, when they put 299 in, Caltrans actually moved it 100 feet south of the grave just so they wouldn't disturb the grave. And then this is the highway on the other side of the grave. But this is the unfortunate fire damage from the car fire. All right, we're at our final destination here. We're about a half mile west of the town of Shasta. This is all empty ground right now. But back in the late 1800s, there's 80 acres of this property is what used to be the Shasta General Hospital. And the Shasta General Hospital was a tuberculosis hospital. There's not a whole lot of information on this hospital. There's some diagrams and maps and things like that, but we do know it was 80 acres. We do know it was right here. And this is also where our 4th cemetery is at here in Shasta. Our 4th cemetery is here at the hospital. Once again, the bodies are still in the ground here at this hospital, and the headstones were removed along with the building and everything else. We don't know exactly what happened to the building, if it was a fire, if they tore it down, or what. But I actually ran into a woman who works for the state park system who has maps and all sorts of things on this hospital, and she's going to email me all this information that she has as well, which is going to be really, really cool. I'm looking forward to it. But I just wanted to show you this to you as well. Like I said, this was 80 acres. This was the first hospital here in Shasta County, and it was a hospital with a cemetery. When this closed down in the early 1900s, this hospital was moved into the city of Redding, the South Redding area. And once again, that was also called the Shasta General Hospital. And that too was for tuberculosis patients as well. And that hospital also had a cemetery with it as well. If you want to see that footage, go check out my video on the Oak Bottom ambush. And I do some historical information on that cemetery as well, and that hospital. But this is a really cool place. I am really glad I got to stop here. I finally found out where this place was. That's going to do it for this episode of California Unearthed. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. We really enjoyed going through Shasta here. All these cool buildings, old ruins. 3 out of the 4 cemeteries. Sorry I couldn't get you up to the Catholic cemetery, but we tried. So like I said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and we'll see you on the next episode.